Hey, how's it going, everybody? Showtime, showtime, showtime once again, but not in the sense of like showtime at like a theater, like literally showtime. And right now it's time to increase fire, no ceasefire. Now, what I mean by this is not necessarily war, even though you see that on the you see that on the thumbnail is more of a com more like a combat type of thumbnail. But I just mean on all fronts because, especially when it comes to the truth, there is a lot of spiritual warfare going on, a lot of war of words going on as we speak. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of what I've said that I've said before on many different occasions and platforms that the truth will always prevail, but wickedness never sleeps. So you got to fight harder with the truth just as much as the wickedness that never sleeps tries to fight against the truth, right? So a lot of things I could bring up in regards to the increased fire, no ceasefire. Well, you got the eviction rates up on a lot of housing. It's going to be harder for people to have housing, but a lot of the evictions are done based on a lot of demographic and aristocratic reasons. Just people wanting to continue to widen the gap of the haves and the have-nots. Okay, you see a lot of that going on. So you're going to be seeing a lot of people that they're going to feel some type of way about that landlord if the landlord keeps giving them a hard time. Now, you might also have the landlord feel some type of way about tenants too. They say that the landlords have 90% lawyer representation and the tenants only have 10% lawyer representation. Hey, what's good, cool gent? Good to see you for the first time over here at Scorch Earth Incorporated. Hope you enjoy, and maybe if you want to jump on and talk about this topic for a little bit, if you got some time, by all means. uh yeah, I'll just try to talk a little more just to kind of get people in the mood of what I mean by increased fire, no ceasefire. So yeah, it's not to really initiate or to cause revolution and things like that. It's more or less we seeing a lot of that taking place with a lot of different opinions out here about what's been taking place. Even with what we have seen has been recalls on a lot of the injections. I'm gonna just be firm enough. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna say it because it's been uh, broadcasted. There's been a recall on a lot of different vaccines since the pandemic. Yes, I'm gonna say it. Okay, and I'm gonna only say it because there was this thing about it needing to be mandatory for a lot of people to take the vaccine. A lot of people had to take it, but there's been recalls. So what happens to those who took it? And you're a victim of certain recalls. Increase fire, no ceasefire. Remember when in Kentucky, a lot of the plants for Pfizer, I think it was Pfizer or Moderna, the plants there in Kentucky got ripped apart by tornadoes, blown to pieces. Kind of reminds me of the way things went down in Lebanon, in Beirut, Lebanon, when that factory blew up and it looked like a big old atomic bomb that blew up. Okay. I forgot what it was that made that factory in Beirut, Lebanon blow up. But I think about stuff like that in that a lot of different agencies, even the White House, apparently it got raided on. We don't know how much of that is true or fabricated, but it is interesting nonetheless because it just goes back to during the Mike Brown incidents when people were trying to burn down as much of St. Louis as possible. And by the way, St. Louis is still rebuilding from the time of Mike Brown, I promise you. Okay. So things haven't changed. So there will be a lot more civil unrest with a lot of increased fire, no ceasefire. Like uh, there still hasn't been public apologies of what has been taking place in certain parts of the world, even here in the United States, where they acknowledge that they believe that the Turkish country, yeah, the country of Turkey, apparently they caused the massacre upon the Armenian people. Yes, the same people that Kim Kardashian comes from, the Armenian people. Apparently, the Turkish people massacred the Armenian people, and I think like the United States called Turkey out for that. But yeah, there was a genocide here in the United States too. Okay, yeah. Mirror, got to look at the mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the one that also massacred all? You know, we got to keep that in mind. So there would be more of an increased fire instead of ceasefire, just given that there's just a lot of things that have not been fully surfaced. These, what they call gender wars, which I call more or less just gender proxy wars, but nevertheless, they're becoming more like scrimmages because it's just going to get a little more complex in details as far as how one can try to usurp the other depending on the ethnicity in regards to these proxy gender wars, right? So that's for another conversation. Kind of reminds me of some information that I just got not too long ago about how, depending on the demographics, a lot of the feminine are trained to basically leave a man behind or to train to just not be with a man. Like it's been indoctrinated in them. So increased fire, no ceasefire. We're seeing some gals even just for the heck of it shoot their husband in the midst of an argument. That's why I believe in hashtag no arguing. That's not to say uh, we won't argue anymore, but no need for any arguing. Okay, because things can quickly escalate, and we don't want that. But there is an increased fire, no ceasefire, because even if a man wants to be peaceful, that's his desire with the girl that he calls his wife or the mother of his child. She just wants to burn the house down just to prove her point. Just to prove your point, and she gets away with it. That's the crazy thing. You know, a lot of people, depending on how deranged they can say they are, they can get away with things by reason of insanity. Right? And like I said, that's just in general. I'm not speaking of gender or just even ethnicity or ethnicity of that particular gender. I'm just saying people can just get away with the craziest things nowadays. What if there was a day you can't get away with things by saying you're crazy? What if the crazy people won't let you get away with it? Keep that in mind. And we kind of live in a world where they say a lot of the corporate world is actually ran by psychopaths. I kid you not. Look this stuff up. Don't take my word for it. Okay. So, what type of world do we really live in? Do we really live in a psychopathic, narcissistic type of world? Y'all let me know. Inquiring minds want to know. Comment in the comment section below for those listening to this on the replay. Okay. But increase fire, no ceasefire. Even when we do talk about war, we see a lot of militaries not knowing what the heck they're fighting for. This was the stint back in Vietnam, even going towards the Iraq wars, Iran wars, after 9/11. Just a lot of this going on. When a man comes home with he's basically a quadriplegic because he lost his limbs in the midst of a grenade being thrown inside of his trench by the opposition. And he gets a call from his general that, hey, we're done with our services here. Pack up. We're going home, boys. But he cannot take his limbs back home with him. And he doesn't even know the full scope of that mission. Now that it's completed, he's like, dang, I just did all that for nothing, you know. And so there's a backlash of even like military mercenaries that like don't want to be caught up in certain government contracts because they don't even know what the heck they're fighting for, right? So, now we're seeing that there's a side to every story. There's a side to even every military story too. And stuff that they can't tell you, stuff that they won't tell you. Be on some straight up CIA type of stuff out here. Like you don't really know what's going on with the food heist, with them hiking up prices and inflation, to where even a pack of egg costs like $5, like for like a pack of 6 eggs. We ain't talking about a dozen eggs, we're talking about 6 eggs, like about $5. Remember when they were only like $1.50, $2? Now it's $5 for 6 eggs. I'm gonna put the link in the chat so I can let some people get on the panel if y'all want to just come up and talk, and we could talk more about this. Increase fire, no ceasefire. Like I said, it's more than just war. It's more than just it's not just merely about there being a war out there. Uh there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a war of words. Uh there's infighting, with relatives. People shooting up their relatives and then shooting themselves afterwards. It's happening on a regular basis, y'all. I just put the link in the chat. 1 second. All right, just put the link in the chat, just in case somebody wanted to come up, talk about this idea of increased fire, ceasefire. Got to keep it in the apocalyptic lens about what's going on, given that this is Scorch Earth Incorporated. So we deal with a lot of things based on the sign of the times of what's happened, what could happen, what's happening right now. Just want to get a better oversight, overview of even things maybe I have not been able to cover so far, thus far. Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, yeah, it'd be nice. Probably get some people on the panel tonight. Maybe not, but we definitely just gonna keep the topic open for discussion. I'll probably be here for maybe like 20 more minutes just to kind of get y'all in this mode of thinking like, yeah, we're in a certain time where trying to think of some other things that's going on. Heck, there's even been an issue with these railroads. Like, I'm not going to talk mainly about like with a lot of freight trains that have derailed. I'm not talking about that. I'm actually talking about a different type of a fight here. The fight of passenger rail versus freight rail. Like freight rail and passenger rail, they actually don't mix. You would think, oh, they're both trains, but they actually are two different types of animals here, right? And I'm not going to get off into the mechanical and the engineering side of it about what I mean about this type of war going on amongst the rails, but let's just say this: the United States is still behind because it simply has not updated all of its rail infrastructure. We did the opposite and developed the interstate. And actually, the interstates were used as part of a racial divide across the United States. A lot of people don't know that. They call it redlining, and a lot of the interstates were literally used to redline communities. Now, what does redline mean? Literally, it's a divide line, kind of similar to the continental divide, more so in this case racial and classical divide. Didn't really mean to use classical in that sense, but y'all get the drift. I mean, basically, for those who lived a certain way and you only made a certain amount of money, you weren't allowed to cross that certain line over to the other side to live more affluent. And this has been going on for a lot of different decades across different cities in the United States. And what they used as a red line was the interstate itself. Okay. So ironically, the first actual red line wasn't the interstate, it was the railroad itself, because they used the railroad to divide up the bison herd amongst a lot of the plains indigenous peoples of the United States that relied heavily on bison, because the bison, they migrate from north to south just like birds that fly from north to south during certain times of the year. Well, you build a railroad that goes east-west, you divide that migration. You pretty much cut off a lot of the major routes that bison have been following for millennia. And then you start to shoot them down to where the plains indigenous people no longer have their source, literally, whether it's food, clothing, shelter, nutrients, weapons, protection. The bison offered all of that. And so you mean tell me that these people use a railroad to divide bison herds up in order to shoot them down? Yes, they did. They were oft from those trains using old Springfield muskets to shoot down every bison they could see for as far as the eye could see. Okay. So, but yeah, fast forwarding, using railroads and now interstates as that dividing line for the people to not progress upon land that has already been not only stolen but ruined. And we're seeing this as we speak. We're seeing more of this dividing line take place. And so certain other places have shown a lot of their frustrations based on just simply the fact that they think it's kind of a colorist issue as far as certain aspects of wealth not being able to be achieved. But now it's just that if you just don't have it, you don't have it. It's not about black and white no more. It's simply about haves and have-nots. And the people that don't have it, they want it. And the people the people that don't have it, they want it. And the people that have it don't want to share it. So eventually that will start to kind of tip the scales, and someone will want to have some kerosene and Molotov cocktails out to try to make it more of a equal thing, more of an equity thing, more so for everyone to have their shot at this American dream. And if not, she can burn down in flames. That's kind of the sentiment of here. But this is going on in a lot of places, not just here in the United States, but around the world. Check out the uprisings that have been happening in France. Okay. There's a lot that has been happening in France, a lot of uprisings. Okay. A lot of uprisings there. A lot of stuff happening in Canada because I guess some Hindus have been apparently slain in Canada. I think they call themselves sheiks. So a bunch of sheiks um, from India have been slain in Canada, and they're really India's not happy about that. India's not happy about that. Let's just put it that way. India's not happy with Canada right now, my people. Okay, so I mean, but it goes even deeper than this because we have global warming that's happening up there in Canada's tundra right now as we speak. We have trees that are traveling further up north. We have wolves that are becoming more black instead of gray because everything's warming up out here. So not only is there's like an increased fire amongst humanity, even amongst nature, we're seeing more of this taking place with the world just kind of warming up a little bit. Things are becoming less white, they're becoming more gray, more black, if you will, as far as the landscape. It's going to be a lot of winters where polar bears will overheat because it's just not getting cold in the winter like it used to be. There's not too many snow caps they can walk on just to try to hunt down a seal because everything is warming up around it. And it's due to a lot of the consumptions of humanity, a lot of things that we waste. There's a lot of rivers, like in Ohio, it's too contaminated of a river for life to thrive there or to even exist. I think in certain places of Ohio, the rivers are just soap suds. That's all you see in some parts of Ohio. I kid you not. But yeah, there's a lot of things I want to just probably save for the next live stream I do of this type. Just wanted to give y'all an idea of how this increased fire shall continue to increase and not cease. Definitely there's no truce, okay? Like yeah, there's a lot of things that could be happening even on the internet. Let's say if there was another lockdown online, I think it'd get worse with more cyber stalking taking place if there's some type of feud that takes place online because you can't see the person to beat them up, right? Because if everything's locked down, you won't be able to go anywhere. So the next best thing you'll do is just try to mess this person up online, whether through slandering or you find a way to cyber hack the person. Like we'll see a lot of that taking place for sure, whether things get locked down or not again, right? But going back to the feminine, I hear a lot of guys online, they talk about semen retention. I hear that. I'm not going to give my opinion of my personal thoughts about it, but what I will say is that Men are basically are becoming less able to be around a woman for whatever that reason is. So some guys actually they will lose function of their functions, if you know what I'm talking about. Read between the lines, because semen retention is just a basically it's just a certain deactivation of a certain function of a man. So over time, if he's used to that certain function being deactivated, what do you think that's going to do? In the movie of Prometheus, it talks about this very thing about how certain beings called engineers actually lost all type of sexual affection. They started to make love to their machines, if you will, but even over time, they got to the point of where they became organic with their machines, so organic that they actually lost their sexual organs. So, keep in mind, could semen retention lead to men actually losing their sexual organs a few thousand years from now? That's just something for y'all to think about. I don't have an answer for that. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. But I will say that it's just something to keep in mind. Okay. So, a lot of what I've seen with a lot of gals becoming more, some have become more aggressive, some have not. Some have I've seen become more hypersexual, which is the opposite of what guys are doing by regressing some of their sexual urges, right? Yeah, there's a lot of hypersexuality going on amongst the feminine, and some of them are loving their pets. I'll just leave it at that. They're loving their pets. They're willing to die with their pets, burn up with their pets, and scorch earth, right? But yeah, some are loving their pets a little too much. Some of these gals out here are. There have been instances where females have been caught with their dog stuck inside of her, and they had to surgically remove the dog. She had to get on a stretcher with the dog stuck inside of her, and they had to cover her and the dog up. I bet she was so embarrassed getting in that ambulance with the dog attached to her still. Stuff like that, right? So, as some gals can't run into a guy to have love and affection with because maybe she didn't like men at first, but she realizes that those same guys have been practicing semen retention so much that now she has to resort to being around a dog to be intimate with that gets stuck to her and she's stuck in the ambulance with. It's kind of a twisted fate on things, right? What happens if the ambulance doesn't show up or can't show up, during certain times of the year? Whether it's too hot or too cold, sometimes it takes an ambulance an hour to show up in certain situations. You try to get a air ambulance, which is a helicopter version of an ambulance to show up. That might take you 2 hours. It depends. So yeah, you might want to really think about how you move out here and don't try to take so many different risks, because you never know if that risk will turn into your regret. Okay. Now, there are calculated risks to take, but there are just those random risks you shouldn't take. So, increase fire, no ceasefire. Too many people will be playing with fire in the days to come, and you'll see them literally burn up. I hate to say it, but yeah, a lot of people don't know what that fire means. Not just literal fire, but just the social fires. Some people try to test one's patience, one's nerves, whether it's through trolling online or whether you harass your neighbor for whatever reason. Some people stalk that neighbor. Well, you don't know if that person had something else on their mind because they've been noticing your antics lately. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of neighbors that just they go postal on their other neighbor for just literally standing at his fence for too long. Like, it's crazy. What if one of the other neighbors don't like it that you be having your telescope out at night too much? Like, you be surprised what neighbors get mad at each other about. So it makes you wonder, like the way suburbia is set up, do they have houses too close to each other? Kind of makes you wonder. You think, oh, I have my own house, but if that house is too close to you, that means neighbors can peep in on your business. They can pry in. I'd say in the future, maybe you shouldn't live so close to your neighbor. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should have neighbors, but not be too close to them. Or maybe these neighbors should be your family, but that brings up another issue about a lot of the infighting taking place. like I said earlier, you have a lot of people going postal on their relatives and then taking the gun out on themselves, right? Like there was a son down in Texas. He was like the son of a former NFL Hall of Famer. He took out his mom and his dad, apparently, right? Like, and he was 16 years old when he did it at the time. Now he's serving like consecutive life sentences as a result. It's really sad because that young guy, he had a young family. He had, you know, he had a wife and children already. Now he's doing this time for whatever reason. Like apparently, it was said that he shot his parents because he didn't like them trying to discipline him. So, but I guess during that time, of trials of, I guess being accused of murder, like he was still able to find a gal to have a family in, to have a family with and get married to. So yeah, I mean that's definitely worth a backstory in itself, right? Um, Trying to think of one more thing I could think of. I'll probably be stopping at the 30-minute mark here. One more thing about increased fire, no ceasefire. Well, I mean, heck, there's a lot going on with a lot of the geopolitical issues out there. I mean, China still wants their rights to the to a lot of what's they consider their open waters, like maritime sovereignty. Like China's still big on that. Like whether it's like around Taiwan or Hong Kong, and you know, they didn't like it that Japan continues to try to I guess, let United States fly their fighter jets close to China without any notice. Like, so China gets heat up about that. I won't speak too much on a lot of the military and political stuff. There's a lot I could go into detail about. I don't want to do that, but I will say that things are heating up out there, y'all. But it's anybody's fight at this point. I would say there's guys going overseas or wanting to go overseas to find better love outside the United States. But you have to watch the geopolitical regions of those places. I'd say you got to be careful if that's what you choose to do. You got to make sure that they get along with China or the United States or North Korea at this point, or if it's an African country, maybe they still get along with NATO or the EU. Like, yeah, you want to find love in those parts of the country, be my guest. You want to find love in those parts of the world, be my guest. But pay attention to the geopolitical things that are going on over there in those parts of the world, my people. Okay, just saying, wake up, wake up. Okay, especially as there's a different currency on the market trying to wreak all havoc amongst the American dollar, called the BRICS currency. I don't know all the different countries that it consists of. I think it's based on Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America at this point, just starting out. Okay. So, no, South Africa, my bad. Yeah. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, part of the BRICS currency they're working on to try to fight and combat the American dollar. But the problem is the American dollar is so ingrained within the international metric of currency that's going to be hard to just necessarily take down the American dollar overnight. Despite its waning value right now, it's still widely used around the world, just like the English language is. You got to change all the metrics because it's also within the digital membrane of a lot of circulations that are taking place around the world in regards to transactions. Like, yeah, you need to reboot supercomputers if you're going to push the American dollar out at this point. And literally, if you're trying to push the English language out at this point, you're literally going to have to reboot supercomputers for that too, because everything manufactured, your Samsung tablet, the first language on it more than likely is English. Okay. So yeah, stuff like that. I mean, yeah, it was made in Korea. I mean, Samsung, but heck, I mean, it's dishing it out to a predominantly international market, which is mostly English. Like, so this gives y'all an idea of even how this will affect linguistics. Think about what it took for the world to finally start to speak majorly English, right? Because there was a Britannic Empire that was international, and it took them causing a lot of hell and havoc around the world in order for everybody to be mostly speaking English across the world, no matter where you go. Like, think about that, y'all. Think about in the future what it would be like for empires to reemerge and things like that. Think about what took place in Hawaii. Yes, that's how you actually say Hawaii. You say Hawaii, okay? Like Hawaii, like people don't realize Hawaii, they called that a state, but Hawaii was actually a tribe. Hawaiians took over other tribes upon those islands, and then they decided to finally call themselves Hawaii after they took over other tribes that were part of that island. Those islands, like this stuff goes deep, but then the karma came amongst Hawaiians when other empires showed up and took over Hawaii, with last but not least the United States being pretty much the sole owners, if you will, of Hawaii. And for quite such a time, because their biggest investment about Hawaii obviously is Pearl Harbor. Okay, so increase fire, no ceasefire. The whole theater of warfare amongst the Pacific front for sure is for countries like the United States and even Canada to make sure that they keep their West Coast shores protected, whether it's through a stealthy submarine fleet or an armada of, battleships and destroyers and corvettes and aircraft carriers, you name it. Or in Canada's case, they used to have the world's fastest interceptor jets that they never put in service, which I wish they did. They had this airplane called well, it's a jet fighter, jet interceptor, actually. It was called the Avro Arrow. Oh man, it was such a wonderful airplane at the time. But Canada had some of the greatest jet fighters, jet interceptors at the time to protect their borders. A lot of countries now, they're switching more towards surface to air missiles. You don't quite need a jet necessarily if you got the best missile defense system in the world. Ask Israel. It's like anything that tries to touch Israel, they have like this I don't know what type of weapon system they have, but it pretty much can take down anything that comes within proximity of Israel. Like it's weird. Like I don't know. Israel got it like that. I don't know. It's like they got a bubble around all of Jerusalem. Like it's weird. Like I don't know. Y'all can look this stuff up. Just look up Israeli missile protection systems. It is insane. But I think it's about that, protecting yourselves. Now, one more thing I will touch on. Okay, is okay. We got all these vegans. We got all these vegans. Everybody want to go vegan, right? You don't want to eat meat. You want to go vegan. You want to grow your food somewhere. Maybe you don't want to go to the grocery store, right? But my thing is like, what if somebody else wants your food too? What if somebody else wants what you have? How would you protect that? How would you protect your food? Like these are things that we think about. Like, you really out here amongst this scorched earth can't think about yourself unless you really know how to take care of yourself out here. Like, people have to come together more as families. I think that's what's missing. We're missing this element of family. You don't even hear a lot of people out here in this social media space, especially YouTube, talk about the importance of family now and in the times to come. We're going to need it. No, everybody's about self and their own self feelings and about what they can get out of whatever they think this world is, not knowing that, anything can happen tomorrow, but right now it's about thinking like that in these times, like being more appreciative of each other. It shouldn't take catastrophic events for us to finally appreciate each other. Like, it shouldn't take that for you to love somebody either. That's why I tell a lot of people, like, you got to be around those that appreciate you. I'm big on appreciation. That's like big for me because that means they appreciate your life, a life for a life. Like, it shouldn't take one being on a deathbed for them to just finally start to appreciate life. But you have that be for a lot of people. Like, kind of like if you saw the movie Saw. Saw was about Mr. Jigsaw himself getting people to understand what life is, whether to appreciate it more or to show them how much they took it for granted. So you had all these gory little schemes and scenes from the movie Saw depicted of narcissistic people having some sort of manufactured karma uh, uh, approach them, if you will, and they had to overcome that challenge, whatever way that Mr. Jigsaw had it set up for them, right? So I don't know. A lot of that taking place too. A lot of what I think is I don't know, a lot of what they think are purge moments, like in Illinois. They got literally a purge law in Illinois where they want to arrest people over certain petty crimes no more in the state of Illinois, the entire state of Illinois. So really, like, a lot of purge incidents could start taking place in Illinois as we speak. With that said, I'm gonna stop right here. There's so much we could talk about. Going to probably save it for the next live stream of this type or just something similar. But just remember, just move through the chessboard. Don't play on the chessboard. Try to stay away from the flames. Don't get caught up in the game. Scorch Earth Incorporated. Over and out.